I have discovered something curious in my years of wandering from Basel to Turin, from mountain heights to Mediterranean shores. The more a man explains himself, the less he exists. This seems impossible, does it not? We have been taught that explanation is virtue, that to make ourselves understood is the mark of civilization, that justifying our choices to others is simple courtesy. Your mother taught you this. Your teachers demanded it. The priests made it sacrament in the confessional booth. Yet I tell you, they have trained you into servitude. Watch any man closely when he begins to explain himself. See how his energy flows outward, scattering in defense. Notice the subtle genuflection, the acceptance of judges he never chose. In the very act of explanation, he grants others authority over his existence. He places himself in the dock, answering to a tribunal that possesses no legitimate jurisdiction. The slave explains. The master acts. This is not arrogance, but simple observation of power. Those who know their own worth need no permission to exist. Those who are hollow must constantly confirm their reality through others' recognition. What follows in these pages will reveal how you were made into an explainer and how you might become sovereign once more. But I warn you, this teaching offers no comfort, only difficulty. The freedom I offer demands strength most do not possess. Do you? I have discovered a mechanism so familiar you cannot see it operating, the compulsion to justify your existence to others. Watch yourself closely. When questioned about an unconventional choice, notice the energy flowing outward in defense, the subtle genuflection before those who demand, explain yourself. In Basel, I observed two professors confronted with identical questions about unpopular research. The first spent his evenings constructing elaborate justifications for colleagues who would never be convinced. 6 months later, he had abandoned his work from sheer exhaustion. The second stated his choice in 5 words: "It interests me," and returned to his study. 6 months later, he had completed a groundbreaking work. The difference was not in their ideas, but in where their strength flowed. Here's what you must grasp. The moment you explain yourself, you have already lost. Not because your explanation is poor, but because explanation itself is submission. Anyone demanding explanation has already claimed authority over you. The demand presupposes they possess the right to judge. And you, in explaining it, grant them that right. I distinguish 3 forms of explanation. First, explanation as submission, defending your existence to those who have no authority to judge it. This diminishes you. Second, explanation as instruction, teaching those who genuinely seek to learn. This is choice, not compulsion. Third, explanation as manipulation, but the weak use to control the strong through guilt. Most cannot tell these apart. Every moment spent explaining yourself to mediocrities is stolen from the work of self-creation. Today, practice this. When questioned, feel where your energy wants to go. Outward in defense or inward, gathered in sovereignty. State your choice without justification. Notice their discomfort. Notice how much power remains available when you refuse to drain it through explanation. Most believe explanation is neutral communication with minor social costs. Let me demolish this comfortable lie. Lou Salome once asked me to explain eternal recurrence to her mother. I attempted it, simplifying, analogizing, defending against obvious objections. When I finished, the concept I loved was dead, reduced to parlor room philosophy. The explanation had murdered what it sought to convey. Later, I simply gave Lou my manuscript. She understood or she did not, but the teaching remained alive. This reveals the corruption principle. Profound truth cannot survive translation for those who lack organs to perceive it. When you explain musical ecstasy to the tone deaf, you do not enlighten them, you kill the ecstasy. Yet you persist in this murder, believing explanation purchases understanding. It does not. It purchases only temporary ceasefire. Tomorrow the herd will demand new explanations. You are negotiating with those who possess no authority to grant what you seek. Worse still, the explaining habit restructures your entire life. You begin avoiding paths that cannot be easily justified to others. You become your own warden, eliminating choices before making them based on anticipated demands for explanation. This is the preemptive prison, how freedom dies without force. Consider now a choice you are contemplating. Write down every explanation you have constructed for parents, colleagues, friends. Ask yourself honestly, am I shaping this choice to make it explainable, or am I choosing what I actually want? Most will discover they've already eliminated paths, not because they are wrong, but because they would require too much explanation. Every explanation places your will beneath another's. You accept their frame, their values, their right to pronounce upon your worth. This is not communication. It is the voluntary installation of masters over yourself. The explaining mechanism is not natural. It is systematically installed. Watch how it occurs. I observed my niece Elizabeth train her daughter. Every natural impulse met with, explain yourself. The child reached for a toy. Why did you take that? She ran outside. Where are you going? Explain. Within months, the sovereign child who simply acted according to nature became a hesitant creature who checked for permission before acting, who narrated her choices defensively. The installation was complete before age 5. Children do not naturally explain themselves. They act, cry, laugh, explore without justification. This reveals our original state was sovereignty, not servitude. The explaining mechanism is imposed through a specific tone. Why did you do that? Asked not with genuine curiosity, but with implied accusation. This tone teaches to act is to incur debt. Explanation is payment demanded. Those who cannot command through strength must command through guilt. Parents demand explanation to maintain control without force. Priests demand it to maintain authority without demonstration. Teachers demand it to maintain order without earning respect. All serve the same function, training servants who explain rather than sovereigns who create. Here's the fundamental error they install: treating existence as proposition, requiring defense when it is actually artwork requiring creation. This week, observe interactions between adults and children. Count how many times the adult demands explanation versus demonstrates genuine curiosity. Notice the tone, investigation or accusation. Now trace this back. Who spoke to you this way? What voice in your head still demands explain yourself in that same tone? Begin to recognize it as their voice, not yours. Write your genealogy. When do you first remember being demanded to explain yourself? Who were the installers? Seeing the installation clearly weakens its grip. Liberation from explanation requires passing 3 tests that most fail. When I broke with Wagner, I faced all 3 simultaneously. The musical establishment judged me harshly. I endured it without defense. Wagner himself proved incapable of understanding my reasons. I accepted his poverty without resentment. Our mutual friends demanded I explain and justify the break. I bore their misunderstanding in silence. Most painful was the loneliness. But 6 months later, thus spoke Zarathustra poured forth. The energy I had spent managing Wagner's expectations was finally available for creation. Test 1. Endure judgment without defense. You are already being judged whether you explain or not. The herd judges first, then demands explanation as submission ritual. Understanding this dissolves the illusion that explanation provides protection. When judgment comes, resist the automatic explaining reflex. Notice that judgment continues regardless, proving explanation was never protective. Test 2. Accept the poverty of your judges. Your judges lack organs to evaluate what you are creating. A blind man cannot judge paintings. Most who demand you explain yourself are literally incapable of comprehending your path. Before explaining, ask, does this person possess the capacity to judge what I am doing? If no, explanation is futile. Test 3. Bear misunderstanding without collapse. The weak cannot bear misunderstanding. Their identity depends on others' correct perception. But the strong build identity from within. Others' misperceptions are clouds passing over the mountain. When misunderstood, feel the urge to correct, to explain, to control perception. Then let it pass like weather. Your center remains unchanged. Mutual explanation binds the herd together. When you withdraw from this exchange, isolation increases. You must ask honestly, am I willing to pay this price? The sovereign individual possesses what I call center, an internal gravity that holds regardless of external judgment, an identity built from within rather than derived from others' perceptions. During my decade of wandering after resigning from Basel, I developed a practice, beginning each day with the same question. What serves my becoming today? Not what will others approve, not what is expected, but what serves my upward movement. This single question, asked daily before engaging with others' demands, built in me a center that could withstand the incomprehension that greeted my work. The morning question practice. Before checking correspondence, before engaging with external demands, ask yourself, what serves my becoming today? Write 3 sentences answering this. Let these sentences guide your choices. When tempted to explain yourself during the day, return to your morning answer. Does explaining serve your becoming? The distinction between need and want. The strong person may want understanding, but does not need it to exist. The weak needs to be understood. Notice when you cross from wanting to needing, this is the moment of collapse into explanation. The solitude requirement, center, cannot be built in constant company. 6 hours of mountain walking daily built my center. Find your equivalent, sustained time where you answer only to yourself. The evening self-accounting. Each night review. Where did I subordinate my will to others' judgment today? Where did I explain when silence would have been sovereign? Where did I lose center? This prevents drift. The physical practice. Notice the posture of explaining. Energy flowing outward, defensive, scattered. Notice the posture of center, energy gathered inward, upright, present. You can literally feel the difference. Institute the morning question tomorrow. After 7 days, you will have a detailed map of when your center holds and when it collapses. Here's the tactical manual for specific situations where explanation is demanded. A woman in Sils Maria traveling alone, unmarried past society's expected age, was interrogated by boarding house guests. Her response, I am content as I am. Then she changed the subject. The interrogators, receiving no purchase for attack, fell silent. She had refused to frame without rudeness. Situation 1, unconventional work. When questioned about unpopular research or unusual career, state your choice in 5 words maximum. It interests me, or it serves my purpose. No elaboration. Situation 2, personal choices, dietary peculiarities, unmarried status, solitary habits. When interrogated, practice the brief statement. It agrees with me, or I prefer it this way. Then change subject or embrace silence. Situation 3, creative work. When your work confounds conventional understanding, resist the manifesto impulse. Let the work speak. Pressed, experience it or do not. Situation 4, life transitions. When making changes others find incomprehensible, resignation, relocation, relationship ending. This serves my path is complete. Situation 5, daily interactions. When strangers demand accounting of your time, your choices, practice non-response. A slight smile, a change of subject, or simply continue in your action. Today, identify which situation you most frequently face. Rehearse the sovereign response mentally. When the situation arises, use the 5-word response or purposeful silence. Some will respect your boundary. Others will call it arrogance. Both responses confirm you have shifted the power dynamic. The mistake is confusing brevity with hostility. The sovereign response is not aggressive. It is simply complete. You can be warm while maintaining boundaries. Distinguish between those genuinely seeking to learn and those demanding submission through explanation. When you cease scattering energy through explanation, something remarkable occurs. Your very presence changes. I observed this in my own transformation. When I stopped defending my work to philological critics, when I ceased attempting to make myself comprehensible to the basal academic establishment, my writing productivity tripled. The energy I had spent in defensive correspondence became available for Thus Spoke Zarathustra. My physical health even improved. The stress of constant justification had been draining vitality itself. Learn to feel where your energy flows. When explaining, you feel it flowing outward, dispersing toward others. When sovereign, you feel it gathered inward, concentrated, available. This is somatic, not conceptual. You can literally sense the difference in your body. Paradoxically, ceasing to explain makes you more attractive to certain people. Those who need everything justified are repelled, but rare individuals capable of direct recognition are drawn to gathered power. Your relationships transform from mutual justification to mutual recognition. With energy no longer scattered in managing perceptions, you accomplish more, not through working harder, but through working with full power. The explainer does diluted work while monitoring others' reactions. The sovereign does concentrated work while remaining centered in himself. Others perceive gathered power as presence. You seem more substantial, more real. This is because you are not divided between what you are doing and how others are perceiving you. Constant explanation is exhausting because you are perpetually performing. When you stop, vitality returns. During your next conversation, practice this. Notice when you begin explaining and feel your energy dispersing outward. Then stop explaining and feel your energy gathering back to center. The silence may be awkward. Allow it. You are learning to keep your power gathered rather than scattered. Here is the ultimate test of whether you have freed yourself. Could you will the eternal return of your life exactly as you have lived it? Beside the pyramidal rock near Lake Silvaplana, the thought came to me with terrible force. What if this moment, this life, must recur eternally in exact detail? The thought was unbearable until I realized only a life I could affirm absolutely, without regret or revision, passes this test. Every moment spent in servile explanation failed the test. I could not will its return. But moments of sovereign creation, of refusal to justify myself to the incompetent, these I could will eternally. Ask of any action, could I will this moment's eternal recurrence? If you are explaining yourself to those incapable of judgment, the answer is no, revealing that the action diminishes rather than enhances life. When you refuse to subordinate your will to others' judgment, you say yes to existence. When you explain servilely, you say no. You deny your life's sufficiency, requiring others' permission to exist. True freedom is not external liberty, but internal unconditionality, the state of being unconstrained by need for others' approval. Power is not domination, but self-overcoming. Explaining subordinates both your freedom and your power to others. The great individuals did not wait for understanding before creating. They created the context in which they might eventually be understood. Napoleon imposed his code, Beethoven composed his symphonies, and both created conditions for their own comprehension. Stop waiting for permission. At life's end, can you say, "This was my life, and I affirm it absolutely"? If you have spent it explaining yourself to those who cannot judge, the answer is no. Apply this test today to a current situation where you feel compelled to explain yourself. The ultimate achievement is not learning techniques for refusing explanation, but becoming the kind of person who needs no techniques, because explanation never occurs to you as possibility. In my final productive year before collapse, I walked through Turin and understood something. I no longer considered whether others understood my work, not because I had practiced refusal, but because their understanding had become irrelevant to my existence. My work was my testament. It would find its readers across centuries, or it would not. I was no longer performing for the tribunal. I'd become inexplicable, not through effort, but through transformation. You begin by doing sovereignty, consciously refusing to explain when the impulse arises. But mastery means being sovereign, explanation never arising as impulse. The shift is from fighting the explaining mechanism to transcending it entirely. Make your existence itself your statement. Create work worthy of eternal recurrence. Live choices that need no defense. Build a life so aligned with your highest possibility that explanation becomes absurd, like the mountain explaining itself to the valley. Stop dividing humanity into approvers and disapprovers. Divide them into the capable and incapable of comprehension. The capable recognize you directly, without explanation. The incapable will not understand regardless. This division ends the explaining compulsion. When you become inexplicable, you give others permission to do the same. Your refusal to explain creates space for others' sovereignty. Here is the ultimate promise. You owe the world nothing but your greatness. Not explanations, not justifications, not submission to mediocrity's judgment. Create something worthy of eternal recurrence, and let that be your only answer. Beginning today, make one choice purely for your becoming, without any consideration of how you will explain it to others. Within months, Explanation will no longer occur to you as option. The book closes, but your life opens. Walk.